There it is.
Okay, looks like we're good.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm going to reconvene the meeting. Mr. Bordeaux, you asked to speak to us tonight, and we're all ears now.
Thank you. Bill Bordeaux, 404 Northwest 3rd Street, Mac. I'm been a resident of McMinnville for the last 48 years. And as an aside, would like to thank Water and Light for 48 years of fantastic service in all three departments. Been great being a citizen here. Water and Light's a public utility, which is my understanding would be that it is owned and operated by the citizens, the service users within its service district, as opposed to a for-profit corporation. I've never understood what the relationship or the quasi-relationship is between Water and Light and McMinnville city government, because in my mind, they've always been two separate entities. So I'm wondering if you guys can explain to me what connection, if any, there is between the utility and the city. Like the city has Parks Department and Fire Department and Police Department. I've never looked at the utility as being like that.
Would you like us to answer now? Would you like us to answer now?
Would you like an answer now?
Yeah, yes, please.
Sam? Or I'll do it if you, but you're the lawyer.
Very simple explanation.
Sam Justice is Water and Light's lawyer. He works for us. And so he studies the city charter and that sort of thing, and he'd be happy to explain this to you.
Okay. It might be helpful, Sam, if you could move down here so that Bill is able to hear you.
Or I can move over there.
I'll walk over closer to you. So the city of McMinnville has a charter that acts a lot like the Constitution of the United States.
Charter for the city.
For this city,
Right.
right? And it's the organic document. And under the city charter splits, it's separate, has a separation of powers I've described it that way, where you have different departments of the city. And so the water and electric.
City and you guys have separate.
No. The city has separate departments. Okay, and the water.
We have separate charters from
We gotta listen.
So the
Water,
water.
Light, and the city.
No. So there's the city has separate departments. So
There's
a
one
police-
charter, Sam.
One charter.
One
There's
charter.
a police department, a fire department, a parks department, a road
Right.
department.
And
Okay.
they also instituted this utility.
No. And then there's a water department and an electric department, right? All these different departments of the city.
But
the
Sam,
charter.
the answer to his question is yes, the charter that creates the city did institute this utility as well.
Okay, so there is an intimate relationship,
Yes.
as it turns out, between the
Can-
city of McMinnville and city government and Water and Light.
So please let Sam finish, because the details of the relationship are very important.
Right, but in broad strokes, so you have these different departments, including the water department and the electric department, then these other departments in the city, planning, street department, parks department. Okay, with the way the city's set up under the charter is there's two governing bodies. There's a city council and there's a water and light commission. The water and light commission governs the water and electric
That's been my
department.
confusion. Just to try to-
The city council
Separate.
governs those other departments. Okay,
Okay,
So-
that basically
make-
answers my question.
Good.
Well, but let's expand it further.
Okay.
The connection comes with the mayor,
and here's a connection.
and the mayor is in charge of appointments to this board.
I know the mayor sits on this board,
Yeah.
but I thought it was more as a
It's their
part of their job.
quasi.
or
Yeah, so
titular.
They're
voting-
allowed to vote on and they're allowed to bring up motions.
They're allowed to vote.
Yeah,
They're allowed to vote.
Oh, they are.
Oh, yeah, and they can bring up motions also.
they're a member of the commission, just like the
They're
rest
a
of us.
member of Water and Light.
Yeah.
So by their position, the mayor sits on this board. The city council then confirms the appointment of everybody to this board.
Okay,
For 4-year terms.
for your term.
And so that has went on for decades and decades.
I've been here for those decades.
Yeah.
I'm talking about 1907.
Okay, well,
We go back to the turn of the century when this all got set up and we got segregated and separated. And so our monies are You might see it, we account for everything separately. We manage our money separately.
That's what I thought. Last December, a year ago, the city council reported to we citizens that the city was $300,000 in debt and had emergency financial situation. There was a bunch of discussion and ongoing backroom stuff, and they ended up deciding on putting out a
$13.
emergency tax surcharge that they decided to put on to have you guys collect for the city. And I guess that's part of the interrelationship that they were able to do that, although
Let me help you with that.
There's a whole dialogue about that.
They instituted a city service fee that was gonna be billed on an
I know
ongoing
that's
basis.
what they called it, but that's not what they told us what it was.
Okay, but the reason we're billing it for them is that we have an agreement with them to do that. And
You do have an agreement to do that.
yeah, we have an agreement to do it. And, you know, we bill their sewer charges for them too. We have for years. And the reason is that our customers are also the citizens of McMinnville by and large. And it's much cheaper for the citizens and for our customers to have us use our billing
Have a
system.
separate billing agency.
Because if they had to set up their own billing system, the city
Okay,
service fee would be
that answers
higher and
my
your sewer
question.
charges would be higher.
All
I
right,
need to know that we challenged that for a long time.
pardon me,
We
No.
challenged,
Yes,
we were not,
I
okay, just so
followed
you
that.
know,
and I
Okay.
agreed with that challenge. However, here we are now, 12 months later, and the citizens of McMinnville, who happen to be water and light customers, have paid off the $300,000 debt, which is what this was instituted for. So my question to the board is, do you have anything in plans in the near term to eliminate the emergency tax surcharge that the city has asked you to put on there?
I can answer that. The Water and Light Commission has authority to set water rates, electric rates, to
Sewer
conduct
rates.
the system.
No,
in
not sewer rates.
Not sewer rates.
No,
We set
Who
water
sets the
rates,
sewer
we collect
the
the
city
city
council.
does.
The city
council.
council.
Okay,
Okay.
so we have the right to, to set and collect those rates and do related activities, which would include billing stuff for the city, because the city pays us much less than would cost them to do it, but they sort of reimburses our costs in doing that. But we do not have any authority about the city services fee. So we have no authority to
Okay,
do what
that's
you
why I
asked.
came here tonight, to see if I needed to deal with you, deal with them.
Deal
Now I
with
know.
the city council. Yeah.
Last question I have for tonight, I was at your presentation before the city council, and I was blown away by it, and I am baffled by how tiny little McMinnville Water and Light is going to find $200 million for capital project improvements.
Mhm. That's.
I
one
didn't
of the
know that
things-
you guys, that the rates you charge, you're not, matter of fact, probably chartered not to be making a big profit. So where do you get $200 million? Plus,
That's-
looked to me like there were other things that were millions
So,
of dollars.
so item number C on our new business, we're going to start having discussions about how we move forward with making sure we can fund those projects out to the
Okay, so
future.
those are visionary,
Out in
but
the
we need
future.
200, we project $200
Correct.
million plus cost for it. Now we have to put the two together and figure out if we can do it.
And the advantage that we have here is we have time. Because these are projects that are looking out 20, 30 years.
I didn't get the impression from your presentation that it was 20 to 30,
Oh, yeah.
like
Oh, yeah.
rebuilding and remodeling this area.
This
I
is,
thought
this is a
or
current, yeah, this is,
Projecting forward.
that project is something we've already planned for. What we're
And
talking
you have
about,
the $37 million for it.
we have, well, that's gonna be phased, so,
They've done in phases.
so
right?
we can do the phase as we get the funds and we can stop.
Thank you so much.
You know that we have no debt here. You as the
I've been
ratepayer
here
should
for
know that.
For 48 years, and when city council said we're in debt, I'm going,
No, water and
I've
light
been
has,
here-
water and light
Oh,
has
no,
no.
water and light, no, I'm talking about the city, but water and light I've known also has been pristine and thoughtful and I also know the people that have worked on the board for years. And so I was shocked because the city has always said, we're in great financial shape, we're doing great, and we planned this, we got this, and then the mayor sits up there and says, we're in financial doo-doo and we're $300,000 in debt. And I'm going, when did this happen? Because I kind of keep track of what's going on.
You were right when you said this is something you should talk to the city council. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good to see you, Bill. You take care.
Waiting for your place on. Okay, thank you.
So as we're waiting for the next move up, I'd like to, for future discussion, to talk about moving appearance requests up further to the top of the agenda, as opposed to waiting for citizens to sit through. I'd like to talk about doing that.
It's only the second appearance it's happened in
I just think that
10 years, so I.
asking people to wait through.
Historically, we've always tried to do that.
Yeah.
It's just.
Yeah,
So good
we
point.
agree.
Point well.
Okay,
Okay.
okay. Next matter is staff reports. Ryan, please.
Hey, Trina, can you bring up that slide? Thank you. So I'll start it off tonight. And so tonight we wanted to provide the commission some general information regarding the lead and copper rule revisions and a brief update on how our staff's working across the water distribution system to meet new drinking water regulations. So the lead and copper rule was established by the EPA in 1991. This rule set a goal for zero for lead in drinking water and also introduced treatment techniques to reduce corrosion of lead and copper within the water distribution system. In 1991, there was several corrections and revisions to the rule. In 2021, the EPA issued the first major revisions to the lead and copper rule in approximately 30 years. These revisions apply to the community water systems across the nation. And the goal is to remove 100% of the lead service lines. The revisions focus primarily on 5 topics. So you have the updating of the sampling protocol, corrosion control treatment, customer communications, regulatory reporting, and development of a water service line inventory. So the last one of those, that development of the water line service line inventory, is probably the greatest level of effort for compliance. Ryan's going to talk a little bit about how our staff, both engineering and operations, have managed that and where we're at today, and how we're going to meet that October 16, 2024 compliance deadline.
Yeah, so up on the screen there, you see it's pretty self-explanatory, but it shows the system-owned service line along with customer-owned service line. So engineering and operations staff has went through, for the last 3 years, went through our entire system down to the service line up to the water main. And we established the pipe material and the age of that pipe. So we've gone through 100% of our system, and we know that McMinnville water light is lead free.
That would be between the meter and the water main.
Yep. That's the delineation point, is the meter pit there in the middle.
And we do not use lead washers to hook the meters up. That was another thing City of Portland did for years.
So we finished 100% of our system owned, established that we have no lead in our system. We're about 60% of the way through. We reached out to, I guess I should back up. We reached out to Yamhill County to get building records, because anything post January 1986 was considered lead free. So we're looking at anything from December 1985 in the past could potentially have lead. So we have to reach out to all the customers and try to figure out what type of plumbing or service line they have. So at this point, like I mentioned, we're about 60% of the way through establishing which homes were built prior to 1985 or December 1985.
And so the customer owned line, the concern is just from the meter to that
To their house.
Into the
yes.
house, and if something is determined to have lead, then is it the homeowner's
So
responsibility?
I spoke to Oregon Health Authority and they're gonna probably, I mean, that's gonna be, the goal is to have it 100% done, completed, removed all lead in customer owned and system owned in 10 years. We're just in the starting phases of this. So I asked that question and she said there's probably gonna be some grants
Mhm.
working along with the utility. Cause another requirement of this revision was the
Control.
yeah, well, corrosion control, and then also, let's see. Yeah, so, sorry, corrosion, yeah, the corrosion control treatment, so that's on our treatment plant staff. And that, we have to maintain a certain alkalinity and pH. That, so in the event that there is lead on somebody's, whether it's lead solder joint on a copper line, that it doesn't leach back out of the system. So that's part of this revision too, is that corrosion control treatment. So we have to maintain a pH in between 7.3 and 7.5 is typically where we keep it at, just so that it's not leaching into the system.
So, I came home from college in 1971, went to work with my folks and got indentured in 72. So I have worked as a plumber, a licensed plumber since 1972. What housing we did in 72 and 73, water services were generally run in PVC. Prior to that, most everything was done with galvanized pipe. You'll find some aluminum related to wartime, because there was no galvanized available. But I spent 12 years on the state plumbing board, and I was on the board when we outlawed 50-50 solder. And it was because Portland's water coming from Bull Run is aggressive. And it was reacting with the lead slugs. It wasn't so much the 50-50 solder, it was the lead slug. So fast forward that, 50-50 solder is long gone, but in the houses plumbed, into the 80s, when we had started using 95.5, those are done with 50-50, but our water is not aggressive and it's not it's not an issue here. But Bull Run water for Portland is
That's
big
absolutely
problem.
true. And in regards, we're talking about the EPAs across the entire nation. So that's, one of these things we bring up here, this is for information, just in case we get asked out in the public, so to say, in regards to what we're trying to do here, and how we comply with it. But in the Midwest and then the East Coast, it's, the lead and copper is a pretty serious situation there. Washington, Oregon, California, a couple of the states, it's not as aggressive. In Oregon itself, just looking on maps and kind of reading some of the articles out there, we don't have as much lead in our systems in Oregon as other states would have.
so. We as a company during COVID did some big lead remuneration projects for the Portland school districts, and it was because of the aggressiveness of the water. So pulling out all the faucets, putting metering devices in, putting filters in at any consumption point, kitchen, drinking fountain, those kinds of things. But I will tell you that I've been all over the country to training centers and that, and there are parts of the country, I think in Chicago, having went to their training center, and they still, 10 years ago, we're still teaching wiping lead for water services because the plumbers ran water services in Chicago on that. But their water is so hard that we don't get the leaching like you do with soft water and stuff. So that water chemistry is honestly
It is
the killer.
And one of the things leading up to this is you read about Flint, Michigan, and some scenarios like that. And that's kind of, this is how these things get generated, because things do happen like that. You change water sources and.
Yeah, they lost all the film in the piping in Flint, and so we are so blessed because of our water quality, and then the fact that we've been, copper water services forever. So, and type K copper too. We're not talking about thin wall copper. So.
You want to add to that?
Thank you.
Okay, so so you're gonna see coming up, we're turning in the process of updating the website, so this is gonna be something that has to be published. That's one of the requirements. It'll be up on the website once it's completed. So you'll see the list and potentially a map at some point. And then also if you get asked in public, I mean, you can reference them somewhere. So people may have questions on this. It's a hot topic in water, not so much here in Oregon. I mean, we have to comply with the regulation, but in other states, it's a bigger issue, so.
We're not allowed to sell because we are licensed as a plumbing contractor. We're not allowed to sell anything that doesn't meet EPA issues and water stuff related to lead. So brass valves and stuff.
Yeah,
Those have got to be manufactured with lead free. But you can go down to a hardware store and you can buy import stuff that's got all kinds of lead in it and stuff. But so that's a big deal. And it's marked on it and stuff. And the inspectors always look for that. So
You're down at the hardware store.
you get do-it-yourself project, they're gonna have some lead valves in it.
So James, I understand that if people ask, our website will have this
It
information.
will. We're in the process of updating it, so I'm working with Marcy and Julie to get something up there on the website. A lot of utilities already have something up there.
Okay,
And we're in the process of getting there. So we'll
Great.
have that image or something similar to that will be up there for explaining and kind of walking through our system.
great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan. Okay, next we have Jamie to talk to us about power resources. Yes.
I'd like to share with the commission a few updates, particularly around some BPA items that have happened recently. First, I'll start with BPA's fiscal year 2023 financial results. Their fiscal year closed September 30th. And again, for the second year in a row, their financial results were favorable, once again triggering the reserves distribution clause. The reserve distribution clause is a function of BPA's financial reserve policy. So that policy sets financial targets and reserve levels that need to be met for the financial health of BPA. And when the reserves exceed that level, triggers the reserve distribution clause. Counter to that, it could also, if the reserves fall short, it could also trigger what we know as a financial reserve surcharge, and then potentially a cost recovery adjustment clause, which we haven't seen a crack in a while, but we have seen the financial reserve surcharge in the last few years. Fortunately for ratepayers, financial results were positive, and BPA saw a surplus in revenue, triggering the RDC. And the caps and the limits and the trigger points surrounding those are established in the general rate schedule provisions set forth by BPA via the rate case process every 2 years. And there is unique processes and limits for both the power business line and the transmission business line. So both power and transmission RDCs were triggered. Power to the tune of 285.4 million, and transmission to 130.4 million. And the BPA administrator has the discretion to, aside from what's laid out in the GRSPs, has the discretion to propose how those excess revenues would be used, excuse me. So here in the memo, you'll see what was proposed recently by BPA, and that for power, that was to return approximately $165 million to ratepayers through the dividend distribution over the next 10 months, to use $30 million as toward fish and wildlife mitigation costs, and the remaining $90 million for debt reduction. And for the transmission, the proposal is $80 million to be used for debt reduction, and $50.4 million to hold in reserves for ongoing program costs, integrated operating costs, essentially. And that proposal was open for comment through December 1st, and with the expectation that BPA would issue their final decision on the 15th. Last Friday, BPA announced that they would be, thank you, they would be delaying that decision until the 22nd.
Of course.
The reason being that they received substantial comment from interested parties on many sides of the issues. A particular point of contention is the money designated for fish and wildlife mitigation, because that is an area of BPA's budget that is substantial already. And it has, but there are many competing interests at play. So we will know more on hopefully a final decision on Friday, the 22nd. And then from there, we'll, share that with the commission. But as it stands, the current proposal, McMinnville would receive about $2.6 million in reduced power costs via reduction to our power bills over the next 10 months, with about 45% of that passed through to industrial customers. But we'll have more to share next time.
Compared to the last time, I can't remember what the dollar amount was the last time.
It's about half.
About half.
So it's not as strong of a return as last year, but still pretty substantial. I mean, this hasn't, it's.
I thought last time it was, what I thought I heard was that it was kind of a fluke, and that we shouldn't expect to be seeing that again. So the fact
True.
that it's rolled around again already is,
Mhm.
so what speaks to that? Like, what drives the fact? What in their business model is happening that's driving them to collect more than they anticipate?
Many will argue that the rates are too high. That-
Yeah, that's what public power argues.
Yes. But there is also other factors at play, the market conditions for power, the hydrological conditions of the water supply, the timing of all of that, demand for power from other regions, what BPA can sell to California or into the market.
What we call the surplus power, surplus to the public power,
Mhm.
public power's needs.
But ultimately, BPA is funded by ratepayers, and so when they're meeting their costs, their revenue requirement, and still, seeing these large surpluses, there's a call from public power in particular to return that to the customers, because certainly BPA's customers would be on the hook if it was the other way around and there was a need for.
That's
Right.
so interesting. It's kind of like the Oregon kicker.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Except they don't give it all back.
So Jamie and John, in reading some of the headlines in the Eastern Washington newspapers and Northern Idaho, with Biden talking to the native indigenous folks,
So that's,
is this an in run that they're trying to make on us?
I would say yes.
You're
That leads us right into the next house, right?
yes, yeah.
So,
Well, would you like to take, I have one other
okay, go
brief
ahead.
mention.
Sure.
I can, okay.
Yeah.
And that is, if that BPA has announced that it will adopt a 3-year rate period for the next, through the end of the contract term, because our contract expires in 2028. So instead of doing a 2-year and a 1-year, they've decided to do 1 3-year.
How do you feel about
It makes sense. I mean,
Less work.
yeah, and the way their process works, we would complete the 2-year and then roll right into the next. And so it makes sense to be more efficient and do it in one time for 3 years. So now John can take it away on the
Columbia River
Columbia
System
River.
Operation Litigation. So maybe just a little background. So the Biden administration has been negotiating with what they call 6 sovereign parties. Okay, those 6 sovereign parties are 4 tribes and the states of Washington and Oregon. So they have reached an agreement whereby EPA will fund $300 million of fish or wildlife projects over the next 10 years. That's on top of an agreement they already signed with 3 upriver tribes to look at reintroducing fish above Grand Coulee. And that was a 20-year agreement for $200 million. So essentially, they've committed to $500 million of funding from BPA over the 10 and 20-year time period. The issue now is that the terms of the agreement were very squishy. And so the other problem is that 2 sovereigns and Public Power, which was an intervener in the litigation, were not included in those negotiations. And those other sovereigns would be the states of Idaho and Montana, and the Public Power Council, which was an intervener party. So that agreement has been filed with the court, the district court, which would be Judge Simon. And what Public Power and Idaho actually sent a very negative letter. And the responding parties, so it'd be Idaho, Montana, and Public Power, have 2 weeks to respond. Public Power is going to preserve their rights in this agreement to potentially sue if essentially preserve their rights to sue in the future. So that's really where that's at right now. But the bottom line is it will cost us money at some point. Absolutely. And so that's just kind of an update on where that's at. Did I miss anything, James?
In some of my other reading, it sounds like the federal government has given up the operation of hatcheries and that, and letting the native corporations.
They've done some partnering with that, but a lot of the money is going to go to upgrading hatcheries. And I think the 30 million going to go to upgrades of hatcheries? Is that kind of what I remember hearing? So, you know, the 30 or the dollars that they're proposing for fish and wildlife, some of those dollars were potentially looking at hatcheries. And I know in the last RDC, that was what it was for. The $50 million. To upgrade hatcheries. Existing
But I
hatcheries.
mean, to increase production for more
Yes.
fish
Yes.
production or
Yes.
whatever.
Right.
Part of the contention is we don't have a full accounting of that 50 million and
Right.
how it was used from BPA.
It's just kind of gone into that.
And-
BPA, the fish and wildlife bucket that BPA has, that's close to $700 million a year.
Mhm.
That Public Power pays for. We pay 100% of those costs. The
So-
power costs that we pay, about a third of that goes to that. So you can add a third of the power costs, the $35 a megawatt hour roughly. A third of that is for just fish and wildlife.
Which means that it was about 10 cents or like, whatever. I mean, we
Right.
and all our bills.
33 cents of every dollar goes to fish and wildlife. That's the way to look at that. So anyway, I just want to give an update on what's going on there, but there's going to be more to come.
Around and around we go.
Thanks, Jamie.
Thank you.
Okay, Chad.
Jamie. Here's a guy that wants to spend that refund we're gonna get.
Yes, good evening. Just wanted to kind of update the commission. So back in June 2000 of this year, Senator Strong was here to present our facility master plan to the commission. And going through it, there was a couple comments the commission had, and one of them was to look at our current warehouse. I guess kind of backing up a little bit. They gave us a general budget, kind of a guideline of how to move through it, and is a phased approach. And one of the comments that was brought forth from the commission was, well, hey, we got a warehouse out there that the houses all of our goods and materials, our crews, trucks. We need to make sure that we get that ready to go, rightfully retrofitted. So if we do have a major earthquake, we can operate out of it. So in turn, staff contacted ZCS Consulting or Engineering and Architecture to do a tier 1 assessment, seismic assessment on warehouse, as well as our office building here. And it was a little bit more involved than just a typical tier 1 assessment. It was actually more almost like a feasibility type study, because they put some drawings in there, and they also put some costs to it. So it's a little bit more involved than a typical tier 1. So tier 1 is a non-invasive. We're not tearing stuff away from the building. It's just a lot of visual. They came and they inspected all of our drawings and all that kind of stuff, which were a little bit lacking on the warehouse. But we gave them everything we had. They did a lot of measurements. So they came back with it and gave us some estimated costs. But some of the questions that was brought up during that presentation was, well, what's it going to cost to retrofit it, the existing warehouse, to
Versus
tearing down and building up. And so in my little report that is in the commission packet, I didn't address that very well. I took the cost to construct a new one is about $6 million, but that didn't include a lot of the costs in there. So I reached out to Soderstrom and I said, hey, this is kind of what we're looking at. Can you give me a number to demo our existing? And we already had a lot of the other information. So with that information, they were able to give me what it would cost to demo and put it new. And it's
With the existing footprint,
with the existing footprint.
not any
Yeah.
expansion, just what we
Yeah.
have today.
Yeah, if it was like for like, we'll say. And it was it's $9,136,600 was their estimate to do that. The warehouse wet retrofit is about $1.2 million is what ZCS is estimating. And it was kind of interesting going through going back to not the water master plan, but facility master plan. Soderstrom actually did have a number in there for a retrofit, and they're just kind of going off the per square foot numbers what they had. And they had about 1.7 million in theirs. So it's kind of in that ballpark.
So Chad, at 1.2, 1.7, we are rebuilding the backbone so it will meet the current
So you might want to talk about that a little bit.
Cascade 9 seismic requirements and that. But it gives us a building that will could live for another 50 years easy or something, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
we
we're-
brought it up to seismic, it's okay. A lot cheaper to build a new building.
Right, and remember, we replaced the roof, about 5 years ago?
Remember that?
Yes,
Yeah.
about 2018.
And so Chad, why don't you we did a tier 1 assessment back in 2018.
We did. So the city actually hired EMG Consulting to do it. We kind of piggybacked on
Yeah,
their
remember that.
contract. And they did a tier 1 assessment. Wasn't as involved as this one was. But there's some minor differences. So I kind of looked between the two reports when we got them back. The EMG, there's a couple things that happened. So there's the standard I have it in front of me, but there's a standard, the ASCE 41-713. So it's a seismic evaluation and retrofit of existing buildings is what they used. And so back 2018, they were using standard 41-13. Since that time, there's been several revisions to it. And so this current one that we just got back from ZCS, it's 41-17. So there has been some changes within that. I tried to contact ZCS. He was a little bit fuzzy on exactly what that was, but it's tightening it up. He said it's got more stringent in that regard.
And Chad, as I remember, we talked, especially about this building, there were sort of two standards. There was a standard that would let people escape from the building, and then you can't use it anymore, or the standard for emergency kind of buildings where people not only survive, but then they can inspect it and go back in and expect to use the building right away.
Absolutely.
It is the warehouse the second one?
So ZCS's study was for a tier 4.
Yes.
Which is immediate occupancy. And that's what we're looking for essential facility
Yes.
standard.
So that's what the numbers you gave us to
The
retrofit it
Correct.
now. That's that. number.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Yeah, and the 2018 one, just for what it's worth, department was to category 2.
Okay, so,
So there was some, and I called ZCS today and I'm like, hey, I'm seeing a little discrepancies between the two. And we kind of talked it out, and that was what the biggest differentiator was.
Sure.
The classification between class 2 and 4.
great,
So,
thank you.
So I think next steps.
yeah, and so that's kind of where we're at. We wanted to come forth, to the commission and kind of present, the information that was requested, and kind of looking to get a head nod, I guess, from the commission to go to the next steps. To get, engineer and architect on board to begin designing this thing. So,
Yeah, I mean, we're behind, that really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We need
Fully
to
support it.
that move, yeah. I'm fine with that.
And Chad, we're talking now about doing this office building all to category 4, right? To
Yeah,
where,
we moved
where
out.
we discussed it early, when we discussed it the last time, the idea was we would do certain vital parts of the building to category 4 and the rest of it to category 2. Is that correct?
yeah, yes.
Yes.
And why did we make that change?
We want to make sure we can occupy immediately
The whole building?
the whole building. Because we have, there are things in the building that we need to have access to right away. Computer system, engineering records.
Were those things that we were gonna put in the category 4 improvement areas?
Yeah,
before?
we were gonna move some of it to the other piece on the backside. There's where we were gonna look at adding engineering.
Mhm.
And so we were gonna move some of that there, but some of it is, and I think it comes to Kathy's point about, having backup for the IT system. And so having that redundancy, and so we're looking at it and saying, okay, it probably makes sense to have the whole facility that way and not just a portion here and not here.
And what's the difference in cost roughly?
What was the upgrade cost they gave us for this building?
For this building, from ZCS,
Yes. 700,000?
716,000.
Okay, and that's the full upgrade.
That's
The
That's
full
the
retrofit.
whole building.
correct.
To category 4.
Yeah.
Or standard 4.
Right.
Where, so presumably, we're not talking about more than, say, half that number to do the whole thing rather than half like we were talking
Yeah,
about.
well, and before what we were looking at is maybe not upgrading this one to, like you said, the whole thing, but having the new parts
Yes,
to the upgrade to the standard 4.
right.
But it seems like it makes sense to have the whole facility to
Okay,
the.
but I just want to know the order of magnitude of money we were talking.
Right,
about
we're
here. So
talking
It's
probably
several-
3 or, yeah,
300 or 400. Okay.
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's,
so-
that makes sense to me to have PLEs the whole.
Yeah, and the other thing is, it's good that the other estimate we've got now is actually lower than what we had before, so, we have more room now it just makes sense to have the whole facility that way. Instead of, well, we can't go in there, but we can go in there.
Yeah,
I think that on the other side of it, if things need more, more reconstruction and more repair after the fact, materials are gonna be more expensive and
Sure.
scarce probably because there's just been a major
Yeah.
event, so probably you're better off to protect as much as you can, because you're probably not gonna
Right.
do well after the fact.
Yeah, and we were gonna have to tear down parts of, take parts of the thing, this building out to get to just that minimum one. We might as well do the whole thing.
Yeah.
but for purposes of this discussion, we're only talking about the warehouse.
No, we're
Or
talking-
are we talking about this facility moving forward in that as well?
Well, so remember the way we had it phased, phase 0.5 was just the warehouse. But
Right,
what Chad's talking about is doing phase 0.5 and phase 1, which included this building as well.
so we're giving you a head nod to do both of those things.
Yes,
So, and it's strictly seismic related. We're not rejiggering anything inside the building, remodeling any.
Well, there may be some.
there may be some of that. I think there is some of that, the
But
interior
they're
walls.
But
But those-
no kicking out and all that kind of.
No, those are gonna be the new portions.
So there's no
Well, we'll know more when we
reconfiguration
see
of
them.
office space?
There's-
within
yes, there
one?
is.
There's
I think
that.
it's
Yes.
about the where. it's not the- What
There,
you're
in
talking
this
about the
building, yes, you're
warehouse.
right. There are reconfiguring internal
That would
walls.
take place during the tier 4 upgrade.
Correct.
Okay,
I guess we'll know more once you start, get somebody on board and bring.
Yeah, and kind of what we're thinking internally is kind of like John has mentioned, is we have phase 0.5 is kind of what we're looking at. Is retrofit of the warehouse. And then potentially moving the transformers from where they are and creating a transformer yard, because our transformers are located such that we need that location. That's gonna be parking. So that opens and frees that space up. And then we can move to phase one, which would be included in this design package, which would look at the addition out front,
Engineering addition on the back,
and
upgrades to this building.
When does the expansion of the warehouse happen?
It was phase
three,
yeah.
space three.
So when we have discussions about this, it would be helpful if we had like a cheat sheet
The
on
phasing.
those phases.
I'm
So we know what we're.
Yeah.
Um,
So phase,
it all makes sense to me that we're doing it in phases, but it would be just good to have as a reference.
we just
point.
probably need to go back to the packet we
Yeah, I
had.
just don't remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Phase
Conversation.
0.5 was just the warehouse building. Phase one was
And just
this building.
just a cheat sheet so that when
Okay.
you're referencing it, we can just.
And we
get it
can do that,
quickly
yeah.
in our head.
We'll do
Yeah,
this.
that'd be
Okay,
great.
Chad, I want to come from left field with this, so humor me. That building out there, let's just talk about an event. If we have protected it, it's supposedly gonna stand at a nine earthquake. It currently houses all of our big trucks and things like that. Here's where you're gonna humor me. Would you be able to talk to those people and find out what it might involve for us to have a portion of that building certified as a Red Cross triage center? The reason I mention that is my experience with being on the hospital board and knowing about certification for hospitals and stuff like that from American Red Cross. The fire department, I was told at the time, was not even certified, could not be a triage center. The Mormon Church was certified out, just because that's how they do things. The Mark's here, he can confirm it. Anyway, that's part of the philosophy, but if we had, 5,000 feet or something that could be buttoned off to be like a field bivouac, I mean, just imagine what we're gonna be. Yeah, I mean, because even though we got a new bridge out here, the talk is a nine's gonna knock. Hospital is gonna be isolated. Both bridges are gonna be down, and so just, I mean, maybe
Well-
just in passing, hey, what's all involved? Would we?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Because I think it's not as bad as,
None of our schools are of that category.
I don't think they do. I don't know. I learned this from a couple of seminars involved there, and also heard it from Scott Hill too.
And maybe the Red Cross would know what's certified. Because if it, if, to Kathy's point, if the new high school is certified. Maybe because of this new construction, maybe we wouldn't need to be. So.
But I mean, the drills and everything we've been through is we become the triage center for the Oregon coast. Whereas the water's supposed to be up, and I mean, thousands of people are headed. McMinnville's been picked as the triage center. I'm just, if we could spare 5,000 feet or something just to help, emergency. Like field hospitals.
It's
fine
under
with the
that.
services
It's
and stuff.
under
So
June.
Just humor me.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if the numbers make your eyes roll, and normally you're crazy.
We'll definitely look into it.
And Chad, John gave me the answer. I just want to make sure I understood it correctly. On Appendix B, this checklist they did.
Yeah.
I couldn't make myself do it. You looked at it.
Yeah, I did.
You looked at it and confirmed that the checklist is consistent with the previous stuff.
Well, and that's what brought forth the conversation, because I was coming up with a couple discrepancies, not a whole lot. And that's when I picked up the phone, I called ZCS, and I said, and they actually had EMGs prior,
Okay.
and we walked through it, and that's when the discussion came up. Okay, we're looking at category 4 versus a category 2.
Okay. Thank you for looking at it.
Yep.
I tried. I really did. I couldn't. Okay. So there's no action on this item, right? You just want to let us know what's going on?
Just,
Okay.
we'll be updating the commission as we navigate through the process.
Okay, Remy, anything? I assume not, okay. Okay, is Mark here? Yeah,
Yeah, he's right there.
okay.
Are you picking your own for next grades or something?
No, I'm just a researcher.
Research.
While we're what?
Running trails. No.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mark.
Commissioners.
Hello, Mark.
So each year, as part of our power sales agreement with Cascade Steel, we do a review of parent company Snitzer Steel.
Excuse me, I just want to check with you. I have a vague recollection that some of this was not supposed to be disclosed in an open meeting. Is that, there was a confidentiality requirement in our contract with Snitzer?
Their production,
Oh, their
their
production numbers?
production numbers.
Okay, this is okay, because it's,
Well, it is,
This is
but-
Dun and Bradstreet.
Yeah, this is all from the
Like Dun and
financials.
Bradstreet type. stuff.
okay, great.
Yeah, this
Okay.
all comes from their 10
But
10Ks.
there is something, right? Just
Right,
not
there.
this. Okay,
Yeah.
great. Thank you. Oh, it was their power use, wasn't it? Yeah,
Yes.
okay, great. Thank you.
So, so we look at that annually. They have an 8/31 year end. We typically have brought this to the commission in like a little bit later, a few months later, because we also look at air gas and we look at those at the same time. But this year in particular has been stronger headwinds for not just Snitzer Steel, but many businesses, higher interest rates and economic uncertainty. And so as a result, we went ahead and had this review done closer to their year end. And so we received that. They did meet all their metrics, as you can see in my staff report. But you can also see that their performance on those metrics decreased. And that was largely driven by, like I mentioned, price of their operations are very dependent on price and demand for their products. They do, of course, recycled metals and products from that. And so they had lower revenues and they also had increased expenses. Part of that was driven by some acquisitions that they made in the last couple of years that they recorded goodwill for. The difference between what they paid and the net assets. There was a higher amount that they paid, and that goodwill ultimately, as the markets come down, resulted in impairment charges. They had about 40 million in impairment charges, and then they also, on those acquisitions, some of the debt that they incurred on that was at a variable rate, and so they paid higher interest as well. And so they had pressure on expenses and on revenues, and as a result, they did have a loss, but all of their metrics, as you see here, they met. So RMG, who is the consulting firm that does the review for us, they provide a pretty comprehensive report. They do, because Snitzer does not have publicly traded debt, they don't have ratings by the rating agencies. And so Snitzer does their own analysis of their, basically they give them a rating. And it's the same rating that they've provided the last several years, but they did give, it's a triple B minus, and which is the lower end of investment grade. But they did indicate a negative outlook. So it's something we'll just continue to watch. But fortunately, the company does have, they've got adequate liquidity and their debt capital is good. So, I mean, they experienced really good results coming out of COVID with all of the public infrastructure, but as that's slowed, it's caused them to stall a little bit. So,
And didn't they do quite a bit of acquisition too?
They did. They grew really quick over the last few years.
Oh, take all your money quick.
Yeah, they operate in 23 states and
In
Canada and Puerto Rico.
Seen their big operation in Canada.
Mhm.
Mark, it says that RMG noted Citrus good quality of equity and assets as well as the adequate liquidity, but
Mhm.
gave a negative outlook on its rating.
Yeah,
So is that going forward? They think
yeah, they're looking forward. They
the
just,
market's not going to be good.
well, so they have additional goodwill that was not written down that could be if there's still, economic difficulties and, the higher interest rates. If there's economic activity that takes off, they'll be fine. But if not, then they potentially could have additional write-downs that would be, detrimental to their financials. So that's why they showed the negative outlook.
So the only way we'll really know there's something going on is the day we don't get the check.
Well,
Next year.
the power sales agreement does allow for not just an annual review, but we can review their quarterly unaudited financials as well. They report those on a 10K, it's called, actually a 10Q, sorry. And actually emailed our consultant and asked if she could give us an estimate of, and maybe what that might look like, not a full-blown report, but just to look and see what the metrics look like for us, so we can get kind of an idea of kind of their direction. And potentially we could approach them if they were not meeting certain metrics, even on a quarterly basis. I believe that's something.
So you'll be hearing about that then.
What's that?
You should be hearing about that.
Yeah, I'm waiting for a response from the consultant to let us
If
know
they'll do it,
what
okay.
that might look like, and then I'll work. with
Please
John to
let us know,
determine
so.
if we want to go forward with that.
Well, it sounds like you're on top of it.
Thank you.
Good, yeah,
Thank
great,
you.
thank you.
Okay, so the next one is landscape mitigation from
Okay,
Chad.
I see the
Yeah,
laying the law down.
no, I'm not laying the law down. I'm just, do you mind if I jump in? Okay, I just want to return to, I know they've left. We're discussing early in the evening during the public comments about this whole idea of street privatization and vacation. I don't want to leave you with the wrong impression, and I may have misspoke, frankly, on exactly what we could do. And I'm not an expert in street vacations, but street vacations can be initiated by property owners, and they're initiated through petitions to the city council, or the city council can initiate on their own. So theoretically, if you wanted to, you could initiate as a property owner, you could initiate a street vacation. You couldn't approve it, you could initiate it, you could petition for it. So that would, I don't want to leave you with the impression that you would have no, voice in that. You could voice that as a property owner on both sides of the street. I think the added sort of conundrum that I sort of see continuing with this idea of vacating the street or privatizing the street is it always comes with this message, but then the street has to remain open for the park. It just seems like sort of this contradiction to what I imagine as a street vacation. But I want to tell you that I think under the vacation statutes, as the adjoining property owner of the street, you could initiate that process.
So,
Chair Tankersley,
Yes.
Mayor Dropkin says, I hope that McMinnville Water and Light will follow up with the presenter since it was implied that I had misinformed him.
Right, and that may be right. And my apologies to the mayor, because after we go through that process, I immediately start thinking about it. It's like, you know what? I think property owners can act to do that. It's just something I haven't thought about for a long time.
But we can't approve it.
We don't approve it. We can petition, right? We can petition.
What does that look like? I mean, I don't understand when you say
It's filed with
a
it's
letter
filed with the
of
city.
intent or.
With the city recorder.
That was the $3,500 I think he was talking about.
Okay, it's a filing with the city to vacate the street.
But
So-
would he be considered a
No,
party because
no,
his property is not, okay.
it would
He
be,
doesn't
it'd be
own
us.
the property. He's
he's a renter.
As I remember from the street vacations and road vacations, the parties are the people who are adjoining owners and people whose property is served by the street.
Mayor Dropkin also says that property owners can initiate, but would have to prove that it was a benefit to the city. She says, I don't believe it would meet the criteria for a vacation request.
Which is what you said.
Well, I'm kind of jumping there, but I think I mean, I'm telling you, you would potentially have a role in that. I mean,
Right.
and a vehicle to do that if you really wanted to do that. So the mayor, if that's what the mayor told him, I think that's correct.
So the question would be, would the mayor support this?
But it wouldn't meet the criteria.
So it wouldn't
He
matter.
said it likely wouldn't meet the criteria.
That's where we got into trouble. That's where we kind of stopped.
My sort of it isn't necessarily legal, but just this whole odd idea of vacating but leaving it open, and plus it remains in public ownership. It's just, all those things seem to me kind of contrary.
But if you vacate it, like if you get an easement across somebody's property, for instance, to be able to have access, it doesn't mean that you have, I think you have a right to pass through the property, but it doesn't give you a right to stop in the middle and set a tent up in the middle of the
It
property.
depends on what the easement provides for. I mean, it's the devil's all the details.
Yeah, I
If
mean,
it's
I
a
feel like,
public easement, then that would allow that.
a public easement would allow for a tent to
Would
be
it?
set up in the.
Because it's public. It has
I mean, I just
You're-
feel like
you're
if the easement is for egress versus the easement is for just public use, like, what is the purpose of the easement? It's to get to the park.
I guess we're trying to figure this out in this meeting. I think we would be benefited by having clarity about what is a vacated, what is the process?
Right.
What's the criteria? Do we believe that there's a path forward? I think we're trying to determine here I think this bears more conversation. And I think the mayor's right. I think it's reach out to the person who presented this evening and say, we are going to explore this in further detail. And I think we need to have some certainty if this is a path forward. Right now, we're speculating it is or it isn't.
The mayor said another comment. She said also McMinnville Water and Light would then be fiscally responsible for maintaining the property. And it's a legal conundrum from what I understand. She said the park can't have one exit.
So I think it's important that we answer this question in a way that says we've gone down this path. Here are the reasons why it's not feasible, and take it off the table, because we've heard this come up a couple of times. It may just be asking the right questions, getting the firm answer and putting that in the record, saying we did our due diligence and we're moving on to the other options.
So Sam, I think I agree with Jody. I think we should look at this. When you do, and I assume you're going to talk to the city attorney about it. When you do, could you also explore whether it would be possible to have an easement that is only for ingress and egress and specifically prohibits parking on the easement? And second, would it be possible, because I've certainly written easements that have maintenance requirements, to say the city's responsible to maintain the easement and keeps them, since they're the ones using it. The benefited party often takes on that responsibility.
We used to have to do that when we got easements on people's property.
Right, I can explore those questions.
So you explore those questions.
But I think it's important what you brought up. We need to have the answers. The black and white answers, right?
Jody, I want to warn you, there may not be black and white.
I worked with Sam long enough to know. It depends.
Does Remy have her hand up, Trina?
She does. The mayor says John and Jeff have discussed. John, could you present on what you discussed?
Yeah, I think Jeff was not comfortable. This whole concept of getting the easement for the park, and I think that's where we got into issues, and I don't think the city wanted to move forward with doing that.
Okay.
And I think that the challenge was that they're not sure what it's going to look like from their perspective.
But Remy, do we want just to tell the people that Sam misspoke himself, that we could initiate the process, but John has talked to the city manager and he's indicated this, the city's not interested in this or not comfortable with it. Is that what we want to tell him? Because if it is, it saves Sam a lot of time.
Yeah.
And it gives certainty to the situation.
The mayor said, I'm happy to have legal counsel continue conversations.
Yeah.
Okay. well,
Okay, okay.
Um,
Okay, great. Thank you.
and then,
So,
Okay,
yes, go ahead, please.
so now I guess we're on to,
Yeah, so I mean, I guess this kind of been prefaced, a long conversation, but. Some of the things that we're just looking for ideas, ways to mitigate the problems that we're having out there. And one of the things that's been brought up is to put boulders out in the greenway on both sides of Marsh Lane. This was something that we contacted CIS about, to see if it was something they would recommend, and they came in, they did our assessment and basically said, yes, it would be something worth doing.
Didn't they also recommend vacating the street?
yes,
So,
and you might we might end up doing both.
So you said it's on both sides of this?
Correct.
I had just assumed it was on, okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Be both sides.
has there been have you had a chance to ever talk to anybody at the state that might be involved in this to evaluate the success of it?
I personally have not. I know the city of Portland, because I've been talking to the same people that they're getting their boulders from.
The question would be, if they went back and reviewed, maybe we should have put them closer or staggered it, because I mean, I've seen coming around 82nd Avenue, they figured out how to build up big pallets and put them on top of the rock and make a elevated.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, they'll be creative.
I think kind of where staff's coming from a little bit, there's a lot of frustration internally with what's happening. It's like Commissioner Tate, it's been 5 years, it's been a long time, and I think kind of the changing dynamic on the street, it's changed. Just kind of like the gentleman spoke before,
Well,
yeah, it's
changed.
changed.
It's measure 110.
Yeah,
That's
essentially,
really driven
Yeah.
the behavior out on the street and the drug use.
So with the boulders, is there space between each boulder, or are there other rocks being put in between each boulder?
so
They're a
they,
couple feet apart.
No,
yeah,
They're touching.
I think we've looked at, didn't we have a
When I look
drawing?
at it,
they're pretty close.
Yeah, they're
Um,
within inches of each other.
They're very close, and they're different size boulders too. So we have 2 to 4 inch, and they're gonna
2
be.
to 4 foot.
Sorry. We got pebbles versus boulders.
Gonna do my-
Pebbles
Your
versus boulders.
definition of a boulder is different.
And so, yeah, the strategy, trying to place those in such a way that hopefully maybe they can't build stuff up. We don't know. I don't know, but we're at the point where we have to do something. Staffs internally kind of get frustrated. We have to try to do something. And I think that's kind of where we're at a little bit. And so that's why the idea was brought forth. Some of my concerns is, well, they're gonna move into our field now.
Right.
They're gonna go down to the park, or down into the trees.
And so
It's
that's
real-
one of the other things I don't know if you've noticed is we actually came through with our equipment and cleared all the underlying brush so we can see all the way to the river now, just for that reason.
Yeah, but the difference is we can actually trespass them then.
Right,
At
they
that
get
point.
arrested.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, and kind of, so with that, after the CIS, we went out and we solicited informal quotations. There's not a whole lot of companies out there that I can find that it can actually supply the quantity and the size that we're looking for. And so I contacted 5, 2 of them responded with quotes, and K&E was the lowest. And so we're recommending to award tonight to K&E Excavation for the boulders for $20,168.
Wait, I thought either I read or heard that we have to get a permit from the city to do this first, and I really don't want to have $20,000 worth of gold.
No, what we'll do is before we buy them, we'll get the permits.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, we'll get the permits first.
And this isn't in the budget, so. how does
Correct.
that work?
That's why we
That's
brought it
why we're bringing it here.
to the
Okay, so
commission.
we approve
You approved it,
out of
yes,
the
Budget.
Budget.
correct.
Normally, this size of them.
Yeah, this is
expense
my
would
word.
come to that.
It would be a budgeted item.
Okay,
So how about placement? That's just a vendor selling us rocks.
Yes, we're gonna place.
And we're
the
gonna be
roads.
okay, honestly, do we have staff to do this?
We're gonna make staff available.
So forget fix the water leaks and
Looks
stuff.
like-
Well, we'll,
I think
all the staff will be
out.
Yeah.
The staff will be out there like.
Jamie's volunteered.
what do we need to do here, Sam?
Well, I think we're gonna need a motion to approve the purchase of boulders. for bullets required for marsh lane landscape mitigation project from Kane Excavation for $20,168. Accordance with ORS 279B 070 regarding intermediate procurements, as the quote that best serves the interests of water.
I move.
With the caveat permit.
Yes, we'll get the permit
The record
wired up.
show that
or
the
just-
permit-
Subject to us getting a permit.
Correct.
Is that the motion, Jody?
Well, of course, but I can't imagine the staff would buy boulders and not know if they could place them, but
Right.
yes,
Well, I don't want to have I
a
don't-
permitted activity. Yes.
There you go.
Second.
Okay. All moved and seconded, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I.
Passes unanimously. Okay, thank you.
Rocky.
Chad's up again, right?
Yes, again, so a lot of facility, a lot of security related items.
This is interesting.
Yes. So, we're looking, we've had several, it's been a while actually, but we had several break-ins. Four, and you can see it. They've been repaired along the fence line back here by the pool shed. And so, we want to harden that up. Since that time, we have put security cameras back there, we put lighting, and it has decreased substantially. But we want to remedy that issue. It's old chain link and it's built for slats. It's wider than it should be, easy to cut.
You think they were figuring they could sneak in here and get a load of copper and back out to the?
Yes,
Yes.
you're absolutely right.
Yeah, we found hard copper piping in the field.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're stashing it or what, but
We've had instances, we had one instance where they came in and they cut the ties on the fence and just dropped the whole fabric and drove in a vehicle.
That takes some gumption, folks.
And the other part of this is we were. Yeah, yeah. I think you want to talk about why, the other reason we're gonna move it out.
Yeah. Yeah, so thank you, Trina. I failed to put this in, as I mentioned in this memo. There's a drawing to kind of show where it is. So it's in that bottom corner there. That kind of,
Light to just, or point.
yeah, that stripe line right there is our existing. That's our existing fence. That
This
one,
goes along to the Wogglin property, okay.
yeah,
Correct.
and so I don't know if you could kind of move that drawing up a little bit, Trina. Trying to see, I don't know, maybe that's the bottom of it. But anyhow, we're gonna kick the fence line out 50 feet at the bottom there.
From down.
Yep. So that'll go into the farmer's field a little bit.
So
So
we're
with,
going down on the slope then too, right?
No, that's flat there.
It's still flat there?
it's pretty
Okay.
flat. There's a little bit of slope, but it's not terrible.
But it starts to, it's further, it drops off further.
Okay.
And so what that does, obviously, it gives us increased storage area back there because now we have all our poles back there. So it gives us a lot more storage area. And then you kind of see by the pole shed there. Now that we do have our poles back there, it's truck traffic and we have deliveries and stuff, and it's really difficult to get around that
Sure.
pole shed. That increases that and opens that up for us. So those are some of the benefits. And the fence line itself is actually gonna have sheets of expanded metal attached to it. So it's really hard, because you basically have to get a grinder out if you want to try to get in. It'll be, have barbed wire on the top. And then
Where
we're,
Constantine.
yeah. Yeah.
Prison.
Well, I mean,
We actually have
I
some
can
down.
show you properties now that got that on, they're
Yeah.
double.
We have some down at the
The
corner
far
there
corner.
because that's another place where people were getting in. They were getting over the fence at that far corner right there where the city property meets us. So that
Could you put it on insulators and?
With
lights on
electric
No,
fence.
no, we wouldn't even think of that.
Yeah. And also have an emergency evacuation exit too.
Which we don't have.
Which
now.
we don't have now. So that gives us an exit if we did have an unfortunate incident happen, that we can actually get out of the premises in the back.
And I
So
think also, were you gonna add a gate
there is
there?
gonna be a vehicle gate there.
We don't have any on that side.
But manually operated?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. That way, you know, for all the brushing and stuff we do, now we have to go all the way out on Marsh Lane. And when it gets like this, we're tracking mud everywhere. So that way we can avoid going down Marsh Lane. So with that, that's kind of the preface of it. This was a formal solicitation. It was advertised in DJC and News Register like we always do. We did have a mandatory pre-bid. We had 5 contractors show up. We ended up getting 2 bids.
It was so interesting to read your report.
It wasn't this is, yeah, the first time it's ever
We
happened.
had a lot of work to go through to sort through that.
Yeah, and so with our bid, we include in the formal bids, we include a statement of bidder qualifications, which really helps us kind of go through the responsibility determination process, which is a state requirement. And so we went through the bid of the apparent low bidder, which is Civil West Construction. Their bid, the bid requirement, sorry, I'm kind of getting off track. The minimum bid requirement that we had in that statement of bidder qualifications, what they had to have 3 years of experience. And so they noted in the bid document that, yes, they met their requirement. And so facially it looked good. And so I was moving forward with the responsibility determination by checking, the sources we always check. We're checking the Oregon CCB, the business registry and all that kind of stuff. Well, everything verified, they have their licenses, but when I checked it, their dates weren't there and it wasn't meeting that 3-year criteria. And so I reached out to them for some clarification. And while they responded several times, they never were able to supply that appropriate information to show that they met that 3-year requirement. So that's kind of brings us here to the next bidder. We're looking to award to the next bidder because they aren't able to meet that minimum experience requirement that the solicitation documents required. So we're actually looking to award to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, Town and Country Fence of Oregon. Their total bid price came in at $101,035,
Which is about 30 grand more than the.
It is.
Do you have a sense that there might be an appeal file once the awarding?
Potential.
Okay.
There's potential. I've been kind of going back and forth with them.
We have solutions for
parallel
that too, so.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And just for what's worth department, 50 years of experience, that there's,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where we're at. Looking for commissioner approval.
Sammy,
tonight
probably
for
language
contract.
for us.
We actually have a resolution, so if you all.
Anybody want to discuss this? any
No.
further? Okay, Sam, if you could read the resolution by title only, please.
Yes, resolution number 2023-27, a resolution by the city of McMinnville Municipal Corporation, of the state of Oregon, acting by and through its Water and Light Commission, awarding contract for the chain link fence relocation, ITB number 2023-0217, to Town and Country Fence Company of Oregon.
Okay, so any discussion? Do I hear a motion?
I'll move for the adoption.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. So Trina, would you pull the commission, please?
Yes, Mayor Tate, or I mean, Mayor Drabkin.
Congratulations.
She can't say anything about it.
Mayor Drabkin says aye in the chat. Commissioner Tankersley,
Aye.
Commissioner Gormley,
Aye.
Commissioner Christensen,
I,
Commissioner Tate.
You got demoted. That was pretty quick. Okay,
Big
so
use,
resolution passes. Thank you. Thank you, Chad. Okay, so now we're talking about the process for development of the financial reserve policy.
So I wanted to get the commission's feedback on a process for going forward with the developing financial reserves policy. And what my thought is, we will start with the water department first. I'd like to have our rate consultant in those conversations so that he can also provide perspective on the rates that the commission sets, what the minimum cash is, and then the other piece will be what optimum cash should be. And I look at optimum cash as having money to build our future capital. And then what I would like to do is move to the electric side and essentially do the same thing, because each division has essentially different risks. Water has certain risks. Wildfire is a big one for water and the timber revenue. Electric's big issue is power supply. And there are risks that I don't think we're capturing in particular in some of the minimum cash, but I think we're also missing some of the things that I call them values the commission has, as far as having cash on hand and primarily using, saving for the big capital projects and not borrowing money. And I think we're not I think we're lacking in that area as far as looking out into the future. We're talking potentially hundreds of millions of dollars. And I'm not sure we're saving enough and we're saving it right to do that. So I think I wanted to spend time and make sure the commission has a good understanding of how rates are set, how we develop those, what the minimum cash is, how we set those, develop an optimum cash, and making sure staff and the commission are on the same page as we move forward.
Kathy, go ahead, I'm sorry. So John, I agree with everything you said, except the optimum cash. And I think that based on my experience with our consultant over a number of years, he has sort of always thought that, we have too much cash.
I don't agree with that.
No, but he agrees we're different. Okay?
Right, yes.
But I'm concerned that he's going to generate an optimum cash number that doesn't reflect what you're talking about,
Right.
but is sort of how low can we get it?
Yeah, and I don't agree with that.
But if we say that and then we.
Right.
So I think that your analysis should go into the minimum cash and the minimum cash should just go up.
And that,
Based
yeah.
on that, but we should not talk about optimum cash because it can only bite us.
Right. Well, and so that brings up the other thing, and you're right, our rate consultant talks about that. So the way we may want to approach that is developing a capital improvement fund.
Yeah, there you
Yeah,
go.
there you go.
And maybe that's the way we handle that
Okay.
issue.
No, that's great, but
Yeah.
but I had a reaction, I still have it.
Yeah.
Optimum cash is just gonna bite us.
Yeah, okay, and that's fine. I like the idea of having a capital,
I do too. That's
because
great.
that to me makes, it's really easy to defend.
Right, and then he can also, he had a good point that at some point, I remember several years ago, he talked about it, at some point, if we finance this all through rates, at the end, when we built the thing, then we're gonna have to have a huge rate cut because so there ought to be, toward the end, there ought to be some bonds. And I think your idea of a capital improvement fund would take that into account.
Yeah, so I just wanted to make sure the commission is comfortable moving that way.
Yeah.
As long as you don't say optimum.
Yeah, I will, yeah.
So can I just ask a question about that then? So I think there's been a lot of sort of touches on having a plan for not just the cash that we
Right.
have, but for unplanned cash.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of cash coming, we have a lot of cash from investing. We have some cash that's come back from BPA. We've
Right.
had some
Yeah.
different things. And so I think since our primary responsibility is electric and water, it makes sense that this happened, that we understand completely, what we need to do to be able to take care of those systems. But then I'm hoping that's a part of that's a step or a base for a larger discussion about, what other things do we want to think about with excess,
Funds.
that come
Right.
in, because, we have a responsibility
Right.
to the taxpayers and, sorry, not the ratepayers.
Yeah.
That's what I meant. And to our community and to our employees and,
Right.
so I just want to think about, we need to create a lot of
Right.
buckets and
Right.
a lot of what ifs,
And,
right?
and I think what you're gonna see is you're gonna see water isn't gonna have those kind of things. The electric side will,
Mhm.
because water is so much more capital
Yeah,
intensive
yeah,
than
yeah.
electric.
Well, yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
Yeah, but when Kathy talked about that, I thought your capital improvement fund is where we can put the money that we get from water from Lafayette.
exactly.
Or Carl.
And that's why I brought that up, because
Yeah.
you've been talking about that and I could never come up with, well, how do you keep it separate?
Yeah.
And the other thing I thought about is the interest we generate off our reserves
Mhm.
should probably go there too.
Yeah.
And this year it's gonna be $2.1 million for both electric and water, just the interest we generate.
So that will help pay for the Willamette source.
Exactly. So that's why I thought it would be, instead of just bringing something to the commission, I thought it would be better to have this as more of a discussion, get the commission, get the staff, so everybody's
Yeah.
moving forward the same way.
Yeah,
Like their approach.
Yeah, I do too, and I really like the idea that we see funds and then we
Right.
like, oh, like we immediately know, what
Mhm.
our plan is for.
Right,
for
and,
that.
and that's why, we have a 10-year electric master plan and we have a 20-year water. But there are things that we look at that are outside that,
Mhm.
that we should be thinking about. And like I say, is the thing that we have, the advantage we have over like somebody else is we think out that far. Where like a lot of utilities, it's a crisis and we gotta go borrow money. And that just costs you even more.
Is he gonna, will we sign professional services contract and just pay him by the hour for this?
That's what I'm thinking, yeah.
Okay, which is fine by me. I'd rather do it by the hour and.
Right.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, well, that gives me
Okay.
direction.
Thank you, Joe.
Okay, thank
So,
you.
so one other quick thing, we might just park the thought though, but there may be a different. We may have an opportunity with surplus water to have another
Oh,
rate
absolutely.
class. Cause we've got somebody right now that's driving into town.
Using our bulk water.
Talking about 20,000 gallons a day or something.
You're thinking, I know who you're talking about.
I don't know, I had somebody approach me about, it. I said, tell them to annex it, and so they never would annex that.
Yeah, no. I
But
mean,
there may be a different class out there that.
yeah, I mean, that's, and honestly, I think there may be other cities that wanna down the road that may be looking as well. And if we have kind of a,
Let's be careful though,
Yeah.
because the costs, I want to be sure we have enough water for our.
right, and I'm not saying that we're gonna, I'm just saying there may be,
No, what ifs?
yeah, the what ifs, and,
Yes, no, that's great.
yeah, so. yeah.
Okay, anybody have any questions about the financials, Kathy?
No,
No, any questions? No?
no.
Okay, so, John, General Manager comments.
I have no more.
Okay, Commissioner comments.
Nothing here.
No, okay, great. So,
So I would say, maybe just on the executive sessions, we won't have the one on IT because that is not
Okay.
available tonight, so
so that's the first one.
that
right?
is the first one, yes.
Okay, so Sam, do you want to do it, please? So.
Right.
Yeah, I will.
So we're gonna enter,
I'm just questioning, will we be coming back in? Okay.
No.
Thank you.
so commission is gonna go into executive session pursuant to ORS 192-660 sub 2 sub E to conduct deliberations of persons designated to negotiate real property transactions. And also pursuant to ORS 192-660 sub 2 sub F to discuss information and records that are exempt from public disclosure under ORS 195-355 sub 9 sub A relating to confidential or privileged records. And ORS 40-225 attorney-client communications. Commission will not return to open session, so there'll be no further action taken tonight. And I don't think we have any media with us tonight. But if we did, they'd be directed to not share anything out of the executive session.
And let's see, so I think we just needed James for the first one on the real property, is that right?
It's up to you, I guess. If
Yeah.
you want James in your.
Yeah, that one.
The mayor has a question.